I regret. But I want to mention that when you signed up, we asked you if you had written a grant to us last year, and over half of you in this call on the Zoom have not. So if it'll be repeat information for those of you who have, but please be patient because I want to make sure that everybody's got the same information here. So here we go. So as always, our grant deadline is May 15th. And as always, especially if you're newbies to this process, Scott and Mario are your go-to people. If something isn't clear here, if you want help, we can do anything short of looking at a draft. So use us shamelessly. I'll be your follow-up person for content, and Scott's the go-to guy for technology problems. And if you're from a public entity, and I know some of you on here are from the county, and you have struggles trying to figure out how to do a project grant that's going to compute to us, Alicia Corliss would be your person. She's great about that. So let's just go over some of the basics, and I think we'll have time for questions at the end. So first of all, if you got a grant last year, remember that your final report is due on April 30th. It's important not just for the bureaucratic, closure of it all, but also because grant reviewers will have access to your final report. And that will tell them how well you've done in the past. So that'll be a factor. So don't blow off your final report, do a careful job on it. And if you don't have very much time, the place you should emphasize at the very end, we say, tell us a story. Spend some time on that story, because think of it as part of your grant proposal. When a reviewer looks at the story, that'll be the emotional tug that tells them, for those of us who really respond to the personal touch, it'll tell us how well you do. So just a tip for that. So if you are a brand new applicant or somebody with a faith group, and I know there's people in both categories on this Zoom this morning, we are asking that you contact me before you start to write, just so I can give you some suggestions about how to be as competitive as possible if you haven't applied before, or just things to do and not do if you are from a group that we consider a faith organization. Other things that are new this year, so we're requiring that. In the past, we just suggested it. This year, we're requiring it. Other things that are new this year, if you've written a proposal before, hopefully, Carrie, I hope this works this year. Hopefully, we've made it easier and clearer about what we expect from budgets and eligibility for the public entities. And I'll talk about that in a second, but hopefully we're better on that this year. And the second really important thing for you all to know is one of the questions is something along the lines of the One Valley Prosperity Project has 5 pillars, and we name them. They actually are climate action, sustainable tourism, resilient economy, housing, health, and equity. And we're asking you which of those you fit in, but then we're saying, and with whom do you work as you move forward in that arena? Again, I'll come back to that in a second when we talk about how you're going to be scored, but points are going to be given this year for how the degree to which and how you work with others. The application remains a lot shorter than it was before 2020. We like the short format. I think you guys like the shorter format too. And there's nothing that you should have to produce specially for us. All of the uploads that are required are things that you ought to have on hand. And I'll mention what those are in a second. The only thing that you're going to have to fetch, especially, is just your Secretary of State for the nonprofits, your Secretary of State affirmation that you're in good standing and that you're registered as a charitable entity. All nonprofits apply only for general operating support. You don't even have a choice. You can't apply for a project. General operating support is not code for administration. It simply means you say our total budget is $200,000, give us $7,000. You don't have to attach it to anything in particular. You can, if you're awarded a grant, you can spend it on staff salaries, you can buy benefits. Oh, right, you can't buy benefits for that little, but you could supplement your benefits. You can use it for equipment, you can use it for programs, anything you want, and you don't tell us how you're going to do it. The intent is it's there for you to use as you need it during the year. As before, public entities and faith-based organizations will only apply for a project. So for those of you who are with public entities, the county, the city, the library, the school district, what we'd said in the past is you're eligible if you're primarily grant supported. And honestly, even our staff didn't know what we meant by that. Sort of, so Stephen gets a lot of his money from the state. Well, is that a grant? Well, yes, sort of, but no, sort of. Or somebody may be a public employee, but they have to raise all of their program money. Does that mean they're grant supported or not? So we got so confused about what we meant that what we're saying is it's for something that you, I think Alicia, who used to work for the county, said that the county terminology is enhancement, not replacement. In other words, you can't use it for something already that you've got money already in your budget to do, or that you expect grant money for. It's something to supplement your regular expectations of income. We liked our collaboration category so much last year that it's still there. We did give 2 grants for the collaborations. One of them was to Cold Harbor, working with Habitat for Humanity on ways to reduce landfill. And another was to 4 different groups in Crested Butte to get a room in the old art center, which is part of the new art center, ready for teaching. So those we were really happy with. So we encourage you to submit collaborative applications if you wish. And if you do that, it doesn't mean that you can't also apply for something on your own. So like if CB Nordic and the food pantry applied for a collaboration grant, they each could separately apply for a grant for themselves. One thing a lot of people say is, well, can we get more money in a collaboration than we could get if we were just applying alone? And no, the top amount is going to be the same, $7,000, no matter what category you apply in. So I want Scott to screen share for a moment here. And just again, since so many of you are new, he's going to walk you through how you get an account, and then we'll just put a sample on application form on the screen and kind of walk you through it. So Scott, over to you.
All right. So here we are on the CFGB homepage. Mario, is my screen sharing?
Yep, it works fine.
Great. So community grants is where we are heading today, and just wanting to share what the resources we have are on our website. So here is the main page for community grants on the CFGB website with the link to SM Apply. We also have instructions that are kind of step-by-step for setting up an organization account in SM Apply. If what is shared here today, if you need a little refresher, you can get back in there. We have the guidelines. We have a reference application. It's really just a Microsoft Word document that kind of goes through the questions. And again, for reference only, and probably not worth the time of filling anything out in that template and then trying to transfer over. Really, your time is best spent just doing everything in SM Apply. But if you need some guiding questions, there they are. What grant uploads are required for this process, and then finally the scoring criteria that you can go in on your own time and look further into, but we just wanted to direct you to where those were on the website. So when you do go to SM Applied, you will hit a landing page, and here's where you will set up your account. So we're not going to go through everything. I know, the routine of setting up online accounts is pretty well established for folks these days, but this is the registration homepage, and you can register at first either as an individual or as an organization. Highly recommend you register as an individual first. Your individual account will be pretty necessary in the organization aspects of when you get to that part, you're going to need your individual registration. So we'll start there. So filling all of that out, creating your accounts will take you here. So you'll get an automated email as soon as you do register, and as soon as your application has started, you'll receive automated. Sorry, my phone is kind of freaking out right now. Give me 1 second. That has never happened before, and really good timing, obviously. Okay, so individual account has been created, and here is where it takes you. So next step in this process is you're going to want to go into my account, top right, and it'll land you on this kind of just like very basic profile page. And here's where kind of the crucial next step is within your account profile, to come down here and set up your organization. So when you come into loading, setting up your organization, all of these fields are, except for the name, all the fields are optional. We're going to go with my go-to template name, Scott's Tots, for any Office fans out there. Very cringy Michael Scott episode, but shout out to that Office episode. So I'm going to just continue for our purposes here, and we will land back on this site. So kind of the main thing to point out to y'all as you are first starting to navigate this landing page, this top left piece up here is really important. It's a toggle that toggles you from your individual account to the organization account. So when you're in your individual account, you will not be able to apply for anything. So if you're up here in the left-hand side and it's just your name, you need to remember to go down to the actual organization in order to be able to go in and apply. And from there, it'll view the programs, and you can come into the community grant application and go from there. So we do have just like a sample application to go through with Mario, but that's kind of the beginning processes of setting up your accounts. And again, sorry for that phone interruption in there, but now we'll, I think, dive a little bit further into what the actual application looks like. Maria.
That's great. And so I'm just going to mention, thanks, Scott, all the various things that you'll be expected to answer, and Scott can sort of identify some of those on the screen as I'm talking. So your initial application will be just basic data about you, the name of your the legal name of your organization. So like the Gunnison Arts Center, which we all know and love its name by, is actually the Gunnison Council for the Arts. So you'll put that in. If you have a DBA like Gunnison Arts Center, put that in. Your federal employer identification number. And then as you scroll through, you'll tell us if you're applying for general operating, which nonprofits will be doing, then you'll tell us the total amount of your current year operating budget, and then your request will be a flat amount up to $7,000. If you're asking for a project grant, you'll tell us the total cost of your project, and then you'll identify how much money you're requesting, bearing in mind that you can ask for no more than half of the cash cost of your project. We'll ask you for your mission statement. We'll ask you for things like how many people you serve in a given year, both local and visitors. For local, we know this is just a guess. We're not expecting you to go count bodies, but roughly how many individuals do you serve? So if the Gunnison Arts Center sells 5 tickets to the same person, we're looking for 1, not 5. Because last year we had a lot of reviewers saying, my God, they serve more than 5 times the amount of the county's population. This can't be true. So how many discrete individuals you believe you serve. And then we have 5 questions for you. They range from 50 to a maximum of 125 words. And whether you're applying for project support or general operating support, the questions may vary slightly, but here's the gist. And we have a general operating application on the screen since most of you will be applying for that. So the first question concerns, whom do you serve and what's the need? Here we're asking you, and the secret sauce of a grant proposal is super specific. Don't say many or most, say, even if you don't know the exact number, say an estimated 80%, like that. So how many people are you talking about that you serve or you potentially serve? Do you have data to show us what the need is? And a couple of tips for here. The first one and most important is the more generalities you use, the weaker your proposal is going to be considered and the less competitive. So every time you've got a sentence that seems to have a generality in it, try to replace it with something super specific. The second thing to bear in mind is we're going to have 9 different reviewers sitting around the table in order to try to get representation from our valley's population. About 1/3 of them will be second homeowners. One of them is likely to be a second homeowner from Gunnison. Probably 2 are likely to be second homeowners in Crested Butte. The point is, these guys may come seasonally to enjoy themselves in our beautiful environment and may not have a clue about the issues of what life here is like. So don't assume anything, and that's important for those people. On the other hand, bearing in mind that the rest of them are going to be year-round local people, among them, there'll be at least one reviewer who will probably know you reasonably well, or at least know the issue that you exist to serve reasonably well. And so we had an issue last year where some applicant focused primarily on the things that they had done in the past and weren't giving us a sense of what the future might hold. And that didn't do them good. So bear in mind that half the people are going to know you and want to know more, and some of the people won't know you at all. So this is a really important place to kind of create a level playing field for everybody. We also understand that the arts and culture, history, environment, community development, and athletics groups might have special challenges talking about the need. How do you talk about the need for an arts center? It's pretty easy to understand need when you're talking about domestic violence or food security, but what about for the arts? Or what's the need for soccer here? And so what you're trying to do here is leave the reviewer thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't know, how can I help? And so perhaps an arts center could talk, think about it like this. Dance education isn't the need. Dance education is the solution to something. What's it a solution for? So think about your issue, your project statement, your problem statement, the need, and tell us about that. And the need isn't your mission. A lot of people say the need, like I say, is the need is for an animal shelter, which it isn't. The animal shelter is a solution for something. So avoid doing that. Okay, the second question is going to be, what do you do as an organization, or for project applicants, what's your project idea? Here's where you do the how, who, where, when, and what, very specific. And a lot of people have said in 125 words, we can't possibly tell you everything we do. Well, the first thing is that the really successful applicants last year were able to. But think in terms of, we do let you upload 2 items of your choice at the end, and you could use one of them as a way to supplement your 125 words here. For example, RMBL last year said, we do a lot of programs for local people like science education and so forth. And then one of their supplementary items was a very detailed program by program by program, giving a description, giving who it was for, giving how many people it serves and so forth. So if you want to, you can think about your supplementary materials as something that can help illuminate the 125 words you're limited to here. Or perhaps you've got an annual report or a great brochure that describes all of the things that you do. That's great. You can upload that one instead. If you are a faith-based group coming in, make sure that your response here includes something about how your project idea is broadly marketed to the whole community, that everybody is welcomed, and that no one is turned away or made uncomfortable if they don't share your core beliefs. So again, give me a call and we can talk about that if you'd like. The third question concerns the difference that you've made in the past as an organization, or if you're applying for a project grant, the difference that you want to make with some group or groups. Once again, here we're looking for specifics, using as many numbers as you can. And remember that here is where the reviewers might turn to your final report from last year to see what difference you made last year. The fourth question, which you'll be grateful to know is a short one, is how do you find out whether you've made a difference? Do you do surveys? Do you do interviews? Do you do careful observation of people? What is it that you look for that suggests, question number 3 is what's the difference you've made? And question number 4 is how you find out whether you've made that difference. And then for general operating applicants, we've got some yes, no questions like how big, or simple answers like how big is your staff? Have you had an audit or a financial review? Are you in the middle of a capital campaign and so forth? And we ask these because it'll help put your budget information into context. So that's the prose that you have to write. And then you've got some attachments. I'm going to first talk about the uploads if you're a nonprofit, and then I'll mention what we're asking for, which is a lot less from public agencies. So nonprofits will provide a budget to actual as of April 30th that includes your current year budget, regardless of when your fiscal year starts. If you don't have approved budget statements from April 30th, like if your board isn't going to meet till May the 2nd, or you review statements a month behind, that's fine. Send us your statements as of the end of March, but then supplement it as soon as you've got your April statements approved, email it in to Scott. We're not going to chase you down to get that information. So just put it on your to-do list to get it to Scott. If we have a statement that's a month out of date, we'll have to dock you points, and you don't want that to happen. We'll also ask you to provide a year-to-date balance sheet, and we'll need you to provide a copy of your certificate of good standing and your certificate of charitable solicitation that would be current as of May 15th from the Secretary of State. If you don't know how to find that, it's really easy, and feel free to give us a call. Then this is one that if you don't have now, it's not too early to be thinking about it. We ask you to upload your fiscal policy document. If you have several, perhaps you can squash them into a single PDF. The reason that we ask you to do this is that 10 of your 35 points are going to have to do with how well managed your organization appears to be. And we've found that a look at your fiscal policy document is the best glimpse into your governance and management that we could possibly get. So we expect that you would have in it things like who handled not only the procedures for money, like where you bank, but separation of duties. What does your treasurer do that your board doesn't do? What does your board do that the finance committee doesn't do? What's the audit policy? How involved is your executive director? Really important are things like, does your board take responsibility for the financials? And is that written down, what their responsibility consists of? So this gives us a really good insight into your governance. We also suggest that good practice says that you should be reviewing your fiscal policy like every 5 years and then put the date on it. Last year, I remember a couple of applicants submitted something that was dated, one of them was like 2010. And people said, does that mean the board really doesn't pay attention to what their fiduciary responsibilities are? And you could just see that group's management score falling as a result. So there's a lot of good practice around that. I think we've mentioned in the news you can use that we've got a sample DIY fiscal template, which you're welcome to have. Just email me and let me know you want it and I'll zap it back to you. It's from a very credible national organization. And it was written for a group with a small staff, but it's intended to be morphed according to your needs. And I know Sustainable Crested Butte, which doesn't have any staff, has morphed it with good success. So we're happy to provide something like that. And so that's what we ask for from, and then 2 supplements of your choice. So it can be anything you want. It can be, as I said, an expansion of what you do. It can be your annual report. It can be a brochure. It can be a link to a YouTube, anything at all that you think shows you off well. Public entities don't have to do nearly so much. They just need to provide, you don't need to show past financials. You just need to provide a project budget that has both income and expense on it. And just a reminder that the convention for a project budget is that it has to balance to the penny. We all know that that's not realistic, but that's the convention. And so if you say you need $5,000 in cash, then you have to show an income of $5,000 in cash. Again, we were happy to talk that through with you and can give you some sample templates if you want. For your financials in general, whether you're a nonprofit or a government entity, the less the reviewers have to guess and interpret, the stronger they're going to perceive your budgeting and your governance to be. So if there's anything at all that you feel might look a little weird or might cause a reviewer to ask a question, get ahead of the game and tell us what it is. And there's 2 ways you can do this. Some people, so when they upload their financials, they make marginal notes explaining why something might look out of whack. But also there's a part in the application that's optional that says if there's anything you want to say to help us better understand and interpret your financials, here's 50 words where you can say it. So for example, I know that Tina McGinnis is on the Zoom, and Tina usually gets a really big grant after their fiscal year is done. So it looks like Mentors ends up in the red, which isn't true at all. And that's easy to explain and understand. She just has to make a note saying our operating money from such and such an organization will be coming in the month after the fiscal year closes. or a lot of you are seasonal. And so 3/4 of your year may show that you don't get very much income, and then tons of income in the fourth quarter. All of this is totally fine. Or you may have had to spend a lot of money last year that left you a little bit in the red because you had to make a special purchase or hire somebody to run your development campaign, but your development campaign hasn't started yet. All of these are perfectly understandable and explainable. Just help us understand them, because just from years of facilitating grant panels, I know that anytime somebody says, hey, does anybody quite understand why this budget doesn't quite come out right, you can see the scores dropping right there. So try to imagine in advance what those questions are going to be. If you're a government entity, we do ask for a letter from your department head or superintendent or principal, or from Western, because I think some Western people are on here, from the director of sponsored programs, saying that this is totally in line with your department's mission. And if you're with a faith-based group, hard to say, something from your board president just affirming that, or your minister or pastor affirming that the thing you're doing is truly open to everybody. I'm going to ask Scott to put up on his screen how you get your points, because if you know how the reviewers are going to score you, you can sort of play to the test. So you can get up to 35 points. Taken all together, and that means not just answering the question, whom do you serve, but looking at your supplementals, all of this stuff taken together, you can get up to 10 points on how clear you are about whom you serve, what the need is, and why it matters. You can get up to 10 points on the clarity about what you do. You can get up to 10 points. Viability in the coming year was a word that we just used because it covers both general operating support and project support. So what we mean here is management. Does your organization, if you're applying for general operating, appear to be stable, responsible, and well managed? And if you're a project applicant, do we believe that based on what you say, how it looks, what your supplementals, the story that your supplementals and budget tell, does it look like it's going to be well managed with the impact that you seek? And then the new one this year that I mentioned at the beginning is, do you work with others? Now, what we don't mean by this is, do you have special programs? Do you spend tons of time? It could be as simple as the food pantry and Mountain Roots keeping each other up to date on whom each of them is serving and therefore whom they might be missing. So it can be as informal as that. It could be, I sent the groups on who are in the environmental category something earlier this morning about just sort of vocabulary and stuff. It could be checking in with each other on that. We're not looking for something over the top to waste your time, but we want to know whether or not you're working as a group, if you're aware of and supporting one another. Do you know what each other's niche in the ecosystem is? And do you complement one another? So that's the way you're scored. And then what happens during the meeting is that the reviewers score you in each of these areas. Then we average and aggregate your scores. Applicants are ranked from the highest score to the lowest. And the reviewers then go through it and see, they start at the bottom and they see, is there anybody here who just doesn't seem as competitive as the others? And we hope there's nobody in that category. We're not trying to kick anybody out, but just in case, then they can draw the line and say, gosh, below this, we just don't think they're of the same caliber as the ones above the line. Then they start at the top and just come up with a decision rule about how much of to award you based on your place in the ranking. And typically the ones that are the few that are at the very top that might be clustered around 33, 34, 35 points might get full funding and so forth. We have $165,000 to award, which is the same as we had last year. And we don't expect to award anything more than $7,000 to any applicant. I will say that some groups in the past have said, well, we know that not everybody gets fully funded, so let's ask for $10,000 and hope that if we get cut back, we get $7,000, which is what we really needed. And although we don't say you can't do that, I will say that in the past, the panels reacted poorly to that. And they say, well, they're just trying to get $7,000 and it's boomeranged on them. So I wouldn't suggest you ask for more than $7,000. Excuse me. There are a few of you on the call that we have already talked to you about applying for a 2-year application. Everything I've said applies to you guys. You're going to be using the exact same application process as everybody else. We will ask you, though, to upload or to email to me one additional item, which is your strategic plan. And I'll be sending you all an email about that separately. So you'll be using the same application, and the intent is to try to make that a little easier for you. So the dates are May 15th. We don't give any extensions. So you've got till 11:59 on that night to get your application in. You'll get an acknowledgement. You know, last year somebody failed to click. Yeah, Shelley, the 2-year applications are for general operating. Last year we had a tragedy where somebody got everything perfectly completed, well on time, and just failed to click the submit button. And so we couldn't review their application, which broke our hearts. So make sure you do that and you'll know you did it right if you get an acknowledgement. So May 15th, the deadline. We're going to be reviewing proposals in late June. They're going to be approved. Our reviewers just make recommendations to our board that actually affirms and accepts the recommendations and makes the awards. That's going to happen on June the 30th. You would find out right after that, because Alicia is amazing as far as getting stuff out to you, whether you were funded or not and at what level. And she would have your contract with that. And then the grant celebration will be Wednesday, July the 13th in the afternoon at the Center for the Arts in Crested Butte, and we hope that everybody can come. I'll say last year we expanded it and made it just kind of like a nonprofit fair for any nonprofit in the Valley, whether they submitted an application or not. So put it on your calendar. That is really all I have to say, except to reiterate that if you want help with content on your person, if you're a public entity like Steve, you're a county entity, but you haven't applied before, if you have budget questions, I can answer the basic ones, but if they're complicated ones, I'm going to refer that to Alicia, especially since she used to work for county finance. She can help you out there. And if you have technical questions, setting up your account or just making the system work, that would be Scott. So that is really what I have to say. And we've got some more time if anyone wants to stay on. We have recorded the session and the link will be in the next news you can use, which will be going out next Thursday. And if you need to have it before that, just let Scott know and he can send you the link. But does anyone have any questions? Okay, hopefully that's because I was so unbelievably clear, succinct, transparent, that makes it simple, right? Yeah, thanks, Steve. Any questions, or did anyone have like an experience from last year that they want to share with everybody else, like a hot tip that they came up with? Okay, then.
I do have one quick question, actually,
Yeah.
and it's just been a while. Is there still the 2 years on, 1 year off? And how do
Oh,
we confirm that?
such a good question. Everybody on this call is eligible. What Ben is referring to is we have had something that we call the sit-out rule, which means that if you get three grants in a row, you can't apply in the next year. You sit out. And there were two reasons for that. The first is that we had so little money in that category. You know, we go out and fundraise for this every year. That we were trying to sort of spread the joy and keep the application pool a little smaller so that we could give larger grants to those groups. And the other reason was that we didn't want groups to put us into their budgets as kind of a line item. And first of all, 165 grand, which is what we've had for this year and last, is considerably more than we had had. And also, we're thinking that line item rule is maybe dumb. You know, the old way foundations used to walk around saying, well, we don't want people to be dependent on us. Well, honestly, if anyone is dependent on, if your existence depends upon getting $7,000 from us, you may be an organization in some trouble anyway. And so we're not going to worry about the dependence thing. It's still on the books, but the staff is going to be taking to our board later this spring a recommendation that we get rid of that rule. I don't know whether the board will accept it or not, but for right now, all of you are eligible, and stay tuned on that. Anything else?
Mario, I'm going to share my screen one more time real quick and just point out something within the application.
Great.
Quickly. Over here on the left-hand side, all of these different uploads places and the actual narrative and get started. Here's, where you can navigate between them. I just wanted to point out in the get started section, that is only one question. And after you move past that section, you cannot go back. The only question it's asking you is what kind of entity you are, whether it's a 501c3, public entity. So just categorizing yourself. And from there, we have some like branch questions that go off. So that piece locks. And if you, for whatever reason, maybe hit the wrong button or you need to change that, you can email me and I can do that for you. But that's the only thing you can't go back in and change. And so after that, I mentioned at the beginning, there's an automated email that goes to you when you start your application. There's also an automated email that will go to you when you finish your application. But in between, you can bounce from these and save and come back to it and close and kind of go in and out at your own pace. The narrative is what we went through with all of these questions, and then the uploads Mario explained. But I just wanted to point that out, as you can go back in and review everything before you submit it. And we kind of have this taskbar to remind what else needs to be done before you can actually submit. So I just want to point out those quick things before we end it here today.
That's great. Thank you. The staff's personal penance is we make ourselves each write an application just to make sure that we feel your pain and see whether or not the wording is clear as you might see it and so forth. So I really got stuck on the saving part for a while and did a lot of cussing. So thank you, Scott. Okay, any other questions or observations, concerns? Okay, with that, as they say, we're here for you. Our goal is that every single applicant should be funded, and we're going to do our best to make you as competitive as possible. So use us shamelessly. Okay.
Thank you all.
Everybody. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.